Hello and welcome to another video. Today we'll be talking about the importance of knowing your worth and the trouble that comes with it. Everything from knowing when to charge a price, when to change a price, when to waive a price, when to prove your price, and the moment where you realize that the price is not the end game, not the end goal or the point of interacting with other creators or clients. Yeah, that's about it. I'm not gonna waste too much time or get into the first point. Probably the most difficult thing for a creative to decide on is charging a price for the services that they give or render, whatever the correct terminology is. Let's say you've been a producer for 1 or 2 years, mostly working with your friends, and you've been referred to by one of your friends to someone you've never met before, probably have been in the same city or in the same circles, but the conversation usually goes, hey, do you do beats, and what kind of beats you do? I'm looking for this type of sound of this type of beat, and you happen to have that, maybe in abundance, maybe have 1 or 2, and then the conversation would usually end with, hey, yo, send me maybe 1 or 2 and I'll listen to them, and if I vibe with them, I'll write something to them and we'll see what happens from there. Say that goes on for, I don't know, 1 or 2 years, and you start to get into some conversations or into some rooms with some big players or some well-known people, and then you realize they actually charge a price for what they do and you don't. It doesn't change how you should be treated, but the natural order of things is that they have a higher status than you, so they can charge a price because they've worked with a few national acts or maybe an international act. At best, you've worked with someone you've been friends with since high school, or a person you met through a friend that you assumed didn't have the money to invest into what they want to do or to invest in you. And probably the perfect time to start charging a price is when you start achieving certain things. Mostly placements, like yeah, it's sort of difficult to think of any off the top, but I would think a national act or a provincial act. Like if you get someone who gets played on your local radio or provincial radio, it gives you enough reason to be like, ah, cool, I can actually like charge $200 for a non-exclusive lease or something like that. Once you start getting played on like national radio, it will be good to assume that your status is increasing at that point and you can charge a bit more for what you do. Another factor that comes into it is that, do you do production styles that are not really commercial? Like, it is easier to sell or to put a price on a trap beat or an R&B beat, or beats or instrumentals that are more common on radio, poppy sounds that are easy to sell. Like the moment they put it on Spotify, they can guarantee themselves 10,000 plays or more. Those type of sounds, like those type of beats are easier to sell and easier to put a price on, but not too much, obviously. When you start dealing with niche markets, alternative scenes, setting a price becomes difficult because you don't know when you should do it and for how much. Again, it stands to the reason that you should set prices when you start increasing your status. I think that's probably the best reason. Other than that is, how rare is your sound? And is the demand high for it? It doesn't help that you have 10,000 beats in the same style, or 10,000 beats in total in varying styles that could accommodate to the more commercial market or the more niche market, but no one is asking for it. I may be jumping ahead, but the reason for that is usually that you don't prove your price. That's point number 4 that I have here, but this is a discussion, so we'll go to that. Setting your price is important, but proving your price is just as important. The best way you do that is knowing how to market yourself. Like if you're a producer, then obviously the first thing people come to you for is beats. So setting up a TikTok account, an Instagram account, or even a Twitter account, and posting regular content every day, maybe 30 seconds or less, because people don't necessarily have that much time. And if you don't capture someone's attention within those 30 seconds, it stands to reason that there's not much there for them to build upon. So setting a price is important, but proving why that's your price or why people should pay that is just as important. And then when you go forward from that, let's say you trade as a producer selling beats for 1 or 2 years. You build up a good client base, and you know who are your paying customers, who you could sell a certain type of sound to, or you also know who would buy into that. That's the point in time where you need to consider changing your price. You also need to take into consideration the climate in which you're operating in. With lockdown going on as it is right now, it is sort of difficult for creatives to prove why people should buy into their product, because their main clientele is not getting money from live shows, it's not getting money from performances. So you end up marketing yourself to people who have a 9 to 5, a paying job, as well as enough reserves to be able to accommodate your prices. The trap that we normally fall into is that once we start getting money, we don't see the need to take money from people who can't necessarily afford the full price, or can't afford to pay the full price in its entirety at that moment. Some people will only be able to pay you over the course of a few months at a set price. Some people will only be able to pay you what they can afford. So say for instance, you set a price for a beat at 500 and the person can only accommodate 350. This is where you introduce trade discounts. A certain percentage of that 500 will be waived in order to accommodate that person's 350. Yes, the value or the price of the beat changes, but the value of the beat itself is understood between the two parties. And again, jumping ahead to the points that I wanted to talk about, but the price shouldn't be the end goal. The meaning behind that statement is that just because you set your prices at a certain amount doesn't mean that they will usually be sold for that amount. Sometimes you have to sell it for half. Like if it's 500, you'll sell it for 250. Sometimes you'll have to get the 500 over the course of 2 to 5 months, depending on how the financial situation of the artist you're dealing with is. It also preserves the nature of the relationship you have with the person. The goal is to make a song. The goal is to create a song or produce a song. Money is involved, but money shouldn't necessarily be the goal. putting money as the goal for the interaction you have with someone ends up creating this notion that we're only doing this so that we can sell money. We're only doing this so that we can prove a point that we have money. And those sort of relationships don't last as long as the genuine working relationships where a person makes music, good music, so people out there can listen to good music. At the end of the day, the goal of any musician is to make good music. Now, the understanding of what good music is differs from person to person, and it's always up to debate whether a song is good or not according to the community that song is meant for. But as a producer or as an engineer trying to make a sale, trying to sell a song idea, trying to sell a instrumental, the thing that you normally have to prove to an artist is that the beat that you're selling is theirs. What I mean by that is that the beat, the worth that it has is subjective to the artist. That beat means more to you than to another artist who could jump on that beat and make it a song. And that's why we go back to the point of proving your price. If you set your beats at 500, 750, 1,000, 2,000, whatever, that price needs to have someone's name next to it. Like if you make a beat for a provincial artist, the price will be at an affordable rate for that person, but it won't be the maximum that you could charge for it. But you would rather sell that because that beat is meant for that artist. That beat could be the foundation of the song that could propel that artist's career forward. For as much as selling it to a national or international artist, all that does is further prove why they are at that level. Whereas it's much more easier to sell a certain beat to a person who needs that to go to the next level or needs that to be heard. And in those situations, you usually have to waive your price or change your price, or remember that price is not the end goal of your interaction with that artist. There have been situations where I produced full-length projects for free. There have been situations where I've produced full-length projects at a discounted rate. I don't think there's been a moment where I have produced a project, a full-length project, or even an EP at the rate that I set my prices at. Reason being is that usually it's a person's budget, or it's what they can afford, or it's a combination of the services that I offer. So obviously they should be at a discount since I'm bundling everything together. But I'm at the level where I'm working with provincial artists at best. One or two national artists, yes, but I'm mostly working with people within my province or in another province. And they're trying to build a name for themselves from where they're from. So a person in Northern Cape is going to send their songs primarily to Northern Cape radio stations or provincial radio stations or community radio stations. That's it. That's the level where they're at. So you could also look at it from the point of view that I primarily put my prices at provincial to national rates. But I do realize that they could be sold for a lot more. But then now it comes full circle to the point of knowing what your worth is and the trouble you have with that. Some producers within South Africa are not meant to be here because their sound is international and it belongs in other places. Or they're in the wrong province and they need to move to the right one so that they can propel themselves forward. But the issue that we run into is that we put artists in the forefront. We put record labels in the forefront. We put DJs in the forefront. But producers and engineers are usually left in the back because most of them are introverted. They don't like speaking up. And if they do, it sounds like they're asking for way too much until people play their songs or until people play their mixes. And then they realize that they're setting their prices at a discounted rate if they're being honest. The reason why is that everyone is really just trying to make a sell. Most people have this as a side hustle, so they don't focus on the price as much. They just want to know that their time has some worth to the person that they're working with. But for people who have this as their main source of income, it becomes difficult to settle for less knowing that you're worth more. But at the end of the day, you want to be able to move up in the world, attain more status, or increase your worth in your community so that you can possibly be paid what you think you are worth. But it's a long road to get to the point where people can pay you with ease or work with you with ease, because the end goal is good music, and good music should come with a price to it. Sometimes it doesn't, because we torrent we torrent most of the music we listen to, and in the rare cases where we buy music is usually from artists within the community. But there is a community within that community that's deeply neglected, and that is producers and engineers. But the reasons for that is that once we do one or two things, we think we are worthy to charge a price from artists, when in actual fact, the quality of what we deliver is not always up to par. And it'll become difficult to prove to a person why you should pay their $500 for that beat, because it's not on the same par as the free beats you get from YouTube. But that is an entire discussion on its own. The plan was to cover the 5 points and come to some resolution where we understand how difficult it is to set prices. But you can see how you can plan to do one thing, but then you have to change as you go. And only when you take a step back to look at everything do you realize that it's not really in your hands.